Hello, and welcome to Sarcastic Spinster, where I question the behavior of the minions of the Pussy Hat Goddess, aka the women's movement, because love her or hate her, we need to understand her. So today we are doing volume 4 of the collective narcissism of minions. And what I'm doing in this series of videos is looking at the symptoms of narcissistic personality disorder as listed on the website for the Mayo Clinic and comparing that to the behavior of the minions of the Pussy Hat Goddess. So this is volume 4, so we are into our symptoms pretty well, but they continue to be interesting. So today's symptoms are: they monopolize conversations and belittle or look down on people they perceive as inferior. And they expect special favors and unquestioning compliance with their expectations. We've seen quite a bit of this from the minions of the Pussy Hat Goddess. The protests and the monopolization of the conversation. The minions really did monopolize the conversation during the Kavanaugh hearings. They wanted to make it all about the Me Too movement, basically. Christine Ford was supposed to represent every woman who had ever been through sexual assault, and Brett Kavanaugh was supposed to represent every man who had ever committed a sexual assault, whether he was actually guilty or not, because again, there was no evidence and it was completely out of character for the way that he had lived the rest of his life. So instead of looking at, well, okay, what would this mean to women? How would he rule based on his attitude towards women? And instead of looking at all of his rulings in all of his years as a federal appellate court judge or his years as a circuit court judge, we want to look at this one single unsubstantiated accusation and make it all about that. So, for example, the woman who cornered Jeff Flake in the elevator, it was to make him listen to her personal story, which had absolutely nothing to do with Brett Kavanaugh. Unless she was accusing Brett Kavanaugh of being her attacker, her personal sexual assault experience had nothing to do with this. And yet that is what the minions of the Pussy Hat Goddess wanted to make everything about. They wanted to monopolize the conversation and make it about all women against all men. I had a little problem with that. But, and monopolize the conversation, they still want to. Just screaming hysterically in the balcony as they were voting was just absurd. Attacking the Supreme Court building like it was sanctuary and the zombie hordes were after them. But that was the way of monopolizing the conversation. And we see this with minions a lot. And they use screaming and oftentimes violence to get this done. If the threats don't work, there's a lot of threats of violence that go. And then if the threats don't work, they will actually move to full-on violence. And that is really dangerous, but that is the narcissistic thing to do. You will listen to me, and if you don't listen to me, I'm going to shriek my head off to make you see how reasonable I am, because shrieking like an old Irish harpy is going to get that point across. Yeah, that's going to work. But they don't expect you to listen because they're behaving rationally. They don't expect you to listen because they actually really believe that they have the better argument. They're not willing to engage in a debate of the different points. They're not willing to listen to what you have to say. They want to monopolize the conversation. Because, of course, anything you have to say is totally irrelevant. Because, again, if you don't believe like they believe, because they are so right and so morally superior to you, that if you disagree with them, you are a piece of shit who can be looked on as less than human. And so, therefore, whatever they do against you to make you listen or to just make you shut up is perfectly justifiable in their eyes. Nothing narcissistic about that. Nothing at all. So, what was the second point? We got pretty much on the first point. They definitely monopolized the conversation. But what was that second point again? Oh, they expect special favors and unquestioning compliance with their expectations. They did expect to be listened to. They expected, if I tell you my story, you will cave and do what I want you to do, because that's how things are supposed to work. And that's actually not how things work. And special favors, can I ask why the hell Alyssa Milano was in the auditorium during the hearings? Why? But as a minion of the Pussycat Goddess, that's a special favor that she can get. If you or I had walked in there and wanted to sit in the auditorium while all that was going on, would we have been able to get a seat? And they expected the special favors to be to vote their way. They expected people who supported Brett Kavanaugh as a judge to just turn around and vote their way, especially the women. Oh my God, the Republican women who voted for Kavanaugh to preserve due process and avoid setting the precedent where anybody accused of a sexual assault, no matter how ridiculous and how unsubstantiated, is automatically tanked. Dangerous, dangerous, dangerous precedent to set. So if they did not want to set that precedent and dared to question the truthfulness of Dr. Ford's testimony and her certainty that whoever assaulted her, if she was assaulted, was actually Brett Kavanaugh, the minions feel so betrayed. Even though these votes were not by minions. The Republican female senators are not minions of the Pussycat Goddess. And yet, the special favor that the minions expected to be granted was that they would vote against their party in favor of women, because this whole Dr. Ford is all women argument was so compelling. Even though it wasn't compelling at all. It was actually flew in the face of our whole foundation of justice, which is individual case by case. We are not a nation that holds one responsible for the crimes of another. So Brett Kavanaugh, according to the rules of our justice, could not be crucified on the altar of feminism just because other women have been sexually assaulted by other men. But they did expect those special favors, and usually they get them. They usually will get whatever special favors they demand, which then just makes them more demanding. And then what happens when they don't get their special favor? They scream and holler and act like an angry mob. And I did see something on Twitter today where Chuck Schumer is, lamenting about how tragic it is that these women came out in force to make their voices heard, and they were called an angry mob by Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham and the president. And I was like, you know what, Chuck? If they didn't want to be called an angry mob, they shouldn't have acted like an angry mob. You act like an angry mob, you're going to get called an angry mob, whether you're made up of women or big purple dinosaurs. An angry mob is an angry mob. And if you're screaming and chanting and occupying buildings and shrieking in balconies, you're an angry mob. So they monopolize the conversation and they pitch fit when they don't get the special favors that they expect and demand. And one of the special favors, and I talked a little bit about this in yesterday's video, which was not one of the collective narcissism. But it was about the double standards of feminism. And so special favors are a big thing that comes with the double standards of special treatment. Really, I want things that I have absolutely no intention of granting to you. And how it's okay for women to sexually objectify men, but it's not okay for men to sexually objectify women, is one of those things that I think falls into the special favors. It's no, sexual objectification is bad. It's really bad. It's horrible. It's terrible. You can't do it. But oh my God, did you see Jason Momoa as Aquaman? Baby. Something to think about. Okay, so we also look at how the minions handle criticism as compared to what that looks like on the Mayo Clinic website. So how they, oh, here we go. This is plays right into current events. So how they handle anything they perceive as criticism. They can have difficulty regulating emotions and behavior. Yeah. You think? The emotions, just and we're supposed to care. I think that may be the thing that bothers me the most is you're hysterical, you're in a crying fit, you're all upset about all of this that's going on, and I'm supposed to give a shit. Why am I supposed to give a shit? I don't know you. I have no idea what kind of life you have lived. And while I may be sympathetic if you're behaving rationally, watching you corner a senator in an elevator to try and force him to comply with what you want done, which is basically making yourself more important than everybody else in the country. why should what you want matter more than what I want? And really, if you can't handle your emotions, if you can't regulate your emotions, why do I care when you get emotional? You're exhausting. Trying to keep up with your emotional roller coaster is exhausting for me. I don't want to do it. I'm not going to do it. I don't have to do it. But for them, that is the biggest argument, the most compelling argument for their cause is, see how emotional I am. See how emotional this makes me. How could you be so cruel as to let me be so upset? I appreciate you coming to comfort me, baby. Down. Yes, that's a good boy. That's a good boy. He cares when I'm upset. Isn't that sweet? Yes, who's my good boy? But this just inability to get themselves under control and act like friggin' adults. And I think that is really what bothers me so much about the whole thing is, you call yourself the women's movement, try putting your big girl panties on and acting like a freaking adult instead of a child. You want to be looked at as the women's movement, act like women instead of little girls. Because right now, it's the tween movement. Because they're acting like a bunch of 11-year-olds who just got their period for the first time. And I can kind of see them in watching this now. Oh my God, she's going to start talking about periods. I got to get off of here. But that unregulated emotion, and they use it as a weapon. They use it as a tool. And they use it to try to make Uncle Sam get down and kiss the boot of the pussy hat goddess. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I'm not having that. And trust me, you don't want to see me when I lose control of my emotions. Yes, I have made people afraid before when I was young and in my early 20s, and I did not have a good grasp on my emotions. Although the only emotion I truly express openly is anger. So think about that. Okay, so as a recap, before I frighten everybody and people are calling Homeland Security because there's this, crazy YouTuber woman talking about how angry she gets. Okay, so just as a recap, for the symptoms, they monopolize conversations and belittle or look down on people they perceive as inferior, because they are so right and so morally superior to you. And they expect special favors and unquestioning compliance with their expectations. And they'll corner you in an elevator to get it. And they deal with criticism by having difficulty regulating emotions and behavior, which is why they turn into an angry mob. So thank you very much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and comment below. Please subscribe as well. I would really appreciate that. And hashtag Pussy Hat Goddess. Something to think about.